In this particular lecture, we're going to talk about 8 ways to captivate an audience, 8 ways to captivate an audience. But I will say up front now that surprisingly, entertaining audiences doesn't require unnatural levels of charisma or natural talent. You don't need, unnatural levels of talent or perhaps, huge amounts of charisma to do it. If you just practice certain techniques and tips, you just be as good as one of the great speakers who you might term to be very charismatic. So let's look at how we're going to do this. To master the art of public speaking, you'll need to learn how to captivate your audience. It is essentially important that you captivate your audience. So what can you do? Number one thing to do is to connect with your audience. Now, what amateur speakers tend to do, or the biggest mistake they make, is to focus and stare at their notes and focus on the wall, or not look at the audience and stuff like that. But you really don't want to do that. You want to practice the art of being able to look at people at all directions. And of course, when we talk about connecting with the audience, you've got to know your audience before you actually start delivering a speech. Because if you're delivering a speech to, let's say, fishermen, you're going to at least go find out something about fishing that you can, use as an icebreaker, or at least say as part of the speech that's going to help them to know that you've actually done some research and you're connecting with them. So it's hugely important that you connect with your audience by focusing your attention on them through looking at them, through eye contact, and also through some of the communication material you use. It needs to ensure that you're connecting with the audience that you're speaking to. The second area is about using humor. Now, I don't want to take this too far to the left or to the right either, but using humor can be a very good way to connect with your audience, because if you're able to make your audience laugh within the first few minutes of your speech, then you'll have no trouble just keeping their attention. In fact, why do you think comedians are so successful? Because the good ones, they're successful because people want to laugh, and when they laugh, they relax. Just make sure that you don't make no inappropriate jokes, because jokes that hinges on race or gender or religion or ethnicity and that kind of stuff, if you don't do it well, it can alienate people. But you got to find a way to inject a little bit of humor just naturally. But if you're not good at being funny, don't try and be funny if you're not. But I think all of us are funny if we just put our mind to it. And the more relaxed you become, the easier it is going to be for you to come up with a joke that works for your audience. Okay, number 3 way, how do you captivate an audience, is to deliver a coherent speech. Now, I talked about this earlier on, the beginning, the middle, and the end. I want to give you a little bit more detail about that. The beginning is the hook that draws people into the whole speech, and one of the techniques to use is to ask a question. I generally love to ask a question. So how many of us believe that if you try certain things, you're going to be successful? Or how many of us know, a name? How many of us know Steve Jobs? How many of us actually own an Apple product here? Can you wave your hand? And people, it does 2 things. It connects with the audience because you've asked a question, and also it interrupts them so that they can pay attention to you. So you using a coherent speech and using a question in the beginning of your coherent speech is a very good way to demand attention from your audience. So that's a very good way. Asking a question is a good way. Telling the story is a good way. I generally just use the question. I love the question one because it's worked for me so many times. So the middle of your speech, like I said earlier in one of the other lectures, is where you put your content. And this section is where you present most of your information on the subject, give direction, and use good examples. Then the end, I want to add a little bit more detail to the end of that, like I said earlier. The end, this is the most important part for most people. This is the memorable part. Your conclusions, the end is the most memorable part. Actually, most speakers will use this part of their speech maybe to sell a product or to sell their services. So you got to spend some time thinking about what you want to say at the end of your speech to challenge people into action. So I've given you a little bit more detail about the beginning, the middle, and the end of your speech. Such a coherent speech will captivate your audience. And, you know, one more way to captivate your audience is to keep on topic. Keep on the topic. It's not unusual for speakers to kind of wander off topic and then if they're not careful, they lose the audience. So to make sure you stay on topic, you might want to put aside some time to kind of craft your speech or work on your speech and pay attention to the information and the key points you want to pass across to your audience. That will kind of keep you in line and keep your audience captivated. All right, I'll see you in the next lecture.